All righty, we have our first public comment period. Any matters that do not appear on the agenda, you can speak. You've got 3 minutes.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Dan Drummond. I live in the Cathy Estates subdivision on Donegal Drive. This is one thing that I did bring up in Mr. Perkins' Talk of the Town. Great session, by the way. One complaint that has come to my attention is simply the time of these meetings. At 9 o'clock on a Monday, people are, well, at work. So one thing that I wanted to at least ask for consideration is possibly once a quarter, or whatever the case may be, whatever makes sense, is to try to have at least one meeting at a time outside of normal business hours. That's it. Thank you guys for listening.
Cool, thank you.
Committee comments. Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Philip, did you have something? that you were
Well,
gonna-
it's kind of a light meeting. We're just wanted to kind of follow up with the DDA. I know we've had some discussions about project kind of prioritization. We had some private discussions, just some of us individually about, you know, what our next focus is going to be. I know we're kind of doing events and we're going to be, you know, investing more in that. We've kind of got our brand down, so kind of the next step is preparing for resources that would come our way, be that in the form of property, be that in the form of grants, different things like that. And so I did just want to kind of get a feel from the DDA on where you would like to focus your first priorities in that regard. So we can seek financial assistance, and so staff would kind of be taking the lead on seeking grants and applying for grants. And I know that the town council is going to be dedicating the fire station to I'm not exactly sure when. Do we have an idea?
I gotta talk to legal counsel about that, but hopefully.
And so I know just based on some of our discussion, that was the fire station in particular, kind of looking back at the LCI and different plans, the comp plan, the fire station seemed to be the first priority in terms of trying to find a use for that building. So, but I just wanted to kind of confirm that because we can also seek grants for facade, loan funds, different things like that. And staff can also we can kind of work on that as well. But we just kind of wanted to get a first notion of priority from the DDA as to where to put our efforts first, so.
Well, I would certainly think that the firehouse, and at least in my opinion, as one of the members, would be our first priority. As far as applying for grants and things like that, I think we need to do whatever we possibly can to help us along, because we're going to need whatever financial support we can to move forward with either other projects or, you know, other items within our power.
I think starting on the fire station gives the town something really, and then as we do other things, there's more support because we've done this.
Yeah, because, you know, a lot of, good, easy, kind of like first things to do as well are some of these revolving loan funds. So if we're able to get grant monies, we can do that as well. And those are just like facade grants or different examples like that. But yes, okay, very good. Well, it was really a simple discussion. I just kind of wanted to make sure as a collective body, we had that discussion and that we knew that was where we're going to focus all of our first efforts. So once we get the fire station dedicated to us, we'll start kind of presenting material, getting material together for you guys to know all of the various options and where we're gonna be seeking money to make that happen. Because applying for grants for that particular type of project as opposed to revolving loan funds, it's a little different, so we just want to make sure we know.
But, I mean, do we have a ballpark, if we do get money from the Fayette County Development Authority, from that land sale that they did for the data center, do we have any idea what kind of money we're talking about? Or even if we would need to look at outside sourcing?
Well, I mean, I know what we, in terms of the from, staff's perspective of seeking the money, I mean, we know approximately like what types of projects we would do with the fire station in particular. And so we would just be seeking grant monies to that effect. So I'm not sure I don't know what the purse is, so to speak, from where those sources come from.
Okay.
But we would just be seeking, however much money, like as we started to dig into, okay, these are gonna be the costs associated with doing it the way we wanna do it, just seeking grants to meet that end. And so that's just kinda how we would approach it.
Okay.
And if we could get more, I mean, of course, we're gonna apply for as much money as we possibly can to facilitate that project plus others if we can.
All right, so then, oh.
But
I'm
that's
sorry. Go ahead.
outside of the data center revenue.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's one discussion that's been had is, potentially, FCDA being able to offer something. But, we would seek it from a variety of sources, not just limited to them, although they might be a good, easy first source.
Yeah, so once we get the fire station, then I guess, like you said, I guess there's two decisions that need to be made. The first one, what's the vision for it? Whether it's restaurant, brewery, something else. And the second, I guess, is, are we gonna build it out and lease it? Or are we just going to sell as is? Or are we gonna build it out and then sell it? And I guess, is that a decision we're gonna make? Or are we gonna make it along with the city? I mean,
We'll
how do you
try
see
it.
that?
Once it's turned over to you, then that's your decision to make. From a business and longevity standpoint, I think it makes more sense, and there's some legal ramblings that we have to go through and some discussion, but I think it makes more sense to retain the building and lease it.
Yes,
But I know that there's some
Recurring
implications
income.
there that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
But we also know through training and research that it can be done. In fact, it's done a lot. And so, it may not be the easiest route, but it is a route. And so I think it's smarter long-term for us to hold on to that building and rent it and use that revenue, sustain some of the DDA's programs. So long as the revenue covers
the note.
everything that, all you're paying back, your notes and all that. So, and I think that should be easy to do based on the types of financing and grants that are out there for this type of application. But yeah, I think long-term, that should be the goal. That's just me, but, I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I mean, you could take whatever you profit from the sale. I know profit's a dirty word in, this application, but whatever you make from the sale, you could turn that into a revolving loan type fund, a low interest, and you could start loaning that money to downtown businesses. You're making a little bit of money off that. So one way or the other, you can turn this into a revenue generator. But, my thoughts on it based on research and conversations is.
And a lot of what I'd like to do, we don't have to make a decision right away. I mean, we'll be able to have time to kind of look at different options. But yeah, I mean, something that I would like to do with the DDA is actually do some field trips, so to speak. I mean, there are plenty of municipalities that have been doing this for years. And, being able to set up a meeting, we've got some good contacts with other cities, nearby cities. We talk a lot about Fayetteville, but there are cities that are, all over that have done great work with some of their, like, some old derelict buildings in their downtown. Jonesboro is a good, actually, example because, I mean, they have the exact same project that we are looking at. And so being able to set up a meeting with them and just get the DDA to do, we could have an advertised work session that we're all going to a particular community to look at something, and we would advertise that, we would all go, and we'd learn from that community about how they did it, what the what the moving parts were and the background on that. So I'd like to be able to do that with a lot of y'all as well. And there are plenty of good examples. But we want to be able to just inform you to be able to make the decision that you think is best for the community. Because ultimately, that's what it boils down to, is what's going to yield the maximum return for impact to the downtown area. All of those options.
And maybe next meeting, maybe can you show us what the LCI showed as the
Yeah,
renditions?
I can
or-
do that right now, too, if you'd like.
I would say that, I'm starting to follow, while he's doing that, I'm starting to follow a bunch of downtown programs and DDA programs on social media. Thomaston has got a pretty active DDA, and I noticed, last week, they had 4 or 5 buildings that they were posting for sale, that were downtown, that they were trying to, get sold for,
Easy for you to say.
But, so if you're on social media, I suggest, find some area DDAs and downtown projects to follow or programs, especially those that are similar in size to what we have, to see what they're doing. Some of them are really thinking outside the box and coming up with some great ideas to revitalize their downtowns and sustain themselves.
Philip had arranged that visit to Jonesboro, and those of us that went, I mean, it's just absolutely impressive what they have done over there. I mean, and they had very little to work with to start with. Jonesboro is not that big, but what they've got going is just, it's outstanding.
They had renderings of that particular building, kind of like phase 1, phase 2.
Not on the page where you can.
I did publish it. It's also a truncated version. It's a very large. We actually had 2 studies that took a look at the fire station. The first one, not really a study, it was really more of a visioning exercise, was we had UGA come to town. A lot of properties in the downtown area. They actually kind of visioned that property a different way, but we'll. So the LCI shows this site as having a lot of potential different variations and phases to it. So it's a larger property, especially with sewer, it's a larger property now. And so they talked about the existing fire station, renovating it as a phase 1, and then phase 2, creating a court, like a pedestrian kind of court in between, and being able to have another building in front of it. There's enough land there for that. So the first phase looked at being able to renovate it as a lot of the discussions we've been having, which is restaurant space, with, really utilizing the fire station, itself in that fashion. Because another option for that property is, of course, demolition and rebuild into something entirely different. But there seems to be enough land that if, you wanted to accomplish that, you could do that phase 2 option of building. But the phase 1, basically creating a plaza, this is kind of vision to be basically kind of tear up all of the asphalt and the concrete, put in a big brick plaza where you can have a lot of interaction there and, that was a phase one look at it. And then, let's see.
Doing that plaza, I think that'll slow down some traffic anyways,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
Just
Th-
draw
and
that-
this-
that-
this
what's going on
also-
here, you know? And it'll slow us down through town.
Yeah, this matches up well with our plans for streetscaping on Sonoy Road too. So we've talked a lot about reconfiguring the right-of-way to basically put parallel on-street parking. You'll have your planted buffer, street trees, and then a nice wide sidewalk. So this design actually, you know, allows you to basically have a big pedestrianized space, and they'll slow down for that. There's also, you know, an assumption that we would have a crosswalk going over to Veterans Park. You'd have better connectivity to Shamrock Park, and kind of showing, you know, the building with another building in front of it. So this would be a path that would run parallel between the fire station and the old police station down to Shamrock Park, and then so, you know, these are definitely options that were envisioned by the LCI. There's kind of a little bit of a market analysis tied to this that shows the feasibility of actually doing it. The full market analysis is not included in this. It's
So that's taking down the police station building right there?
yeah, that does show you know, better parking, which is still a conversation. I don't know if we would do it exactly that way, but it's really just talking about, okay, if you're reconfiguring the downtown area, you know, a centralized parking lot that's a lot better organized is
Mandatory.
yeah. That's something that we really need to look for. And, you know, that coupled with putting more on-street parking would, you know, that's how we can handle that. Having a centralized parking lot, removing parking requirements from the downtown area on businesses, because they're already small properties, and when you put large parking requirements on them, then they're not actually able to build the buildings that you want because they have parking requirements that they need to. So essentially, the town taking the responsibility of building parking downtown and relieving the property owners of that obligation. Having a large centralized lot like that is helpful. We could even situate this lot behind the pre-existing building of the fire or the police station or different things like that. You know, there are a lot of different options for parking.
We have a project going on right now that's gonna move the fenced-in pole barn from behind the police station. It's gonna move that to Hanley Park. So we don't necessarily have to turn the entire police station property into a parking lot. I think we could facilitate a multi-use building up towards the street and then still have, even if it's a private project, and then we could have additional parking in the rear where that pole barn area is. So we're still accomplishing what this diagram, or what this concept shows, but we're not just taking a useful piece of downtown property and just turning the whole thing into a parking
Is
lot.
it possible to build on and bring it forward? Because you were talking about maybe bringing it more like a downtown, bringing everything towards the sidewalks.
Yes, so the thought would be,
Could we build onto it?
you could build onto it or just completely take it down, build something new by the street.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a deep lot.
Yeah.
So now there's a couple of things that we're having to look at. So just for, you know, so everybody understands what this process is. So when the county dedicated the Shamrock Park property to the town in the 90s, I guess it was, there was a stipulation that property always had to be for recreational use. Well, long before that happened, the police department building was owned by the town. It used to be our our town municipal complex. Sometime between the county turning that property over to us and now, the police station property and Shamrock Park property have been combined into a parcel, at least according to the GIS. So we have Dennis now working on research to find out when that happened and why it happened. and then make sure that we can take the police station property back out as a separate lot and not affect that agreement. Because like I said, that property was built by the town in the late seventies as the town's municipal complex. And should not have been part of that. It should not have been the same parcel as Shamrock Park, because that was county property. So we're trying to get that figured out. Once we have that figured out, then we can start looking at what, for sure what we can do with that property. So we're doing a lot of catch-up right now and a lot of, fixing past mistakes and things like that. And I've learned over the last 4 years that I've been in this position that you can't always go by the GIS, but, a lot of people do. But when you first see it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a mess that we got to get cleaned up, so.
This is all great. I just don't want to lose that concept of having that cart path going behind, the post office and there and Shecraft and so on and so forth to get into the park. And I know that would be worked out, however we decide to do that.
That's still a
Yeah,
project.
it's on
that's-
the other drawing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that was a SPOS project. So yeah, if you look at the overhead, we do show the path going behind. And it's still a big part of, what we're planning for connectivity downtown as a whole. LCI, envisions Commerce Drive becoming more pedestrianized, having, the connection behind all of the businesses. That's something that we definitely want to emphasize. We have a potential with that project, and if the 2023 SPOS gets passed, we have some thoughts about how to enhance that project. So, especially just putting into the park, making Shamrock Park, really.
All righty. Any other thoughts? Okay, thank you, Philip. All right. That being it, we have our second public hearing session for anything that does or does not appear on the agenda. So anybody who wishes to speak, you have 3 minutes to do so. Seeing none, any board comments? I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Drummond had brought up earlier. We had talked about this at the end of our last meeting with everybody regarding the potential of holding one meeting per quarter at 7 p.m. on a scheduled Monday, that we would have that in order to allow others to come. And those that I had spoke to were kind of in favor of that. So if that is not an issue, I think that we need to just come up with a date, and if that works for you guys too. Philip, would that be?
We need to talk to count.
Yeah, we
Because
have-
you set your meetings, I think your meeting schedule is part of your founding documents. You could have, I'm sure, special call meetings if you wanted to, but we scheduled the meetings for 9 a.m. We were following what other DDAs do.
Right.
Also for, for the staff, you've got an attorney, 3 staff members here,
Good point.
and it's business, we don't do this so that people can't come. We understand that at 9 a.m. it is difficult, or anytime during the day, it's difficult for the public to come. But it's not outside the boundaries of what other people do. And I'm not suggesting that we not do a different meeting schedule, but I think Ms. Cox should weigh in on that before we do anything.
It would have to, we've already approved a meeting schedule. We have to approve another one. Called meeting, perhaps. Let's set up a time. Which day are we talking about, and give plenty of advance.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Ally. Like a supplemental meeting of some sort. We can also, if it's relevant, depending on the discussions at a council meeting or a planning commission meeting, communities have joint work sessions frequently with different boards and bodies. So we can try and schedule something like that so that it's perhaps something where staff is already present. You know, we can have a joint work session. Maybe the topic is relevant. It's about downtown. It's about the, you know, what have you. So we can kind of look at that as well. But I think special called meetings are probably the better way. Because we also know that, you know, most of you also have full-time jobs, which is why we have it, tried to do it early in the day. Us having full-time jobs as well, we can all be present for, so.
Can it be more of a public comments section, maybe during a council meeting, or, for the DDA? I don't know if it needs to be,
You wouldn't wanna
A full
mix-
meeting.
Mix business
right,
at the two different meetings.
or a presentation of some sort, just, I don't know.
That would be logistically, that'd be very difficult, plus I don't think you'd wanna mix.
Yeah.
So,
This might be something to think about, but, we could meet very briefly before some of our events, if you wanted to have a event. It's something where we're present, it's a Friday, maybe it's a Friday, we have a meeting. It could be a short meeting just for the public to kind of come in and have a summary of comments. That's a possibility as well, but I think a special called meeting is probably the way to go.
and one other thing just to keep in mind is that your support staff, the three of us and Ally are, well, Ally a little different, but we're paid by the town, not the DDA, so the DDA is not big enough right now to have a full-time staff. So if you change your schedule, that would require us to, well, Philip and our salary, but it affects Sierra because she's hourly. And so what we would have to do is either pay overtime or have her flex her schedule around. So that's important things to consider.
That is.
There's more to it than just,
Putting a meeting up.
yeah, there's a lot more to it. If it were council, we're at their service, and they can do whatever. But we just have to consider, if we know ahead of time, we have a special call meeting, we're gonna do the third meeting of each quarter at 7 PM or something like that, and we know ahead of time, then we can try to, we can better work around it. But to have a set schedule where, that's why we didn't set our regular schedules, let's say the second Monday at 7 PM.
Right.
Rather than 9 AM.
Does anybody have any idea of how much demand there is for this? Besides, I guess, Mr. Drummond?
Well, we don't, but I think, to Mr. Drummond's point, I guess it was to be at least to have some sort of a venue that we can offer so that people do have an opportunity to come.
That's not a bad point.
I mean, we,
Try it a couple of times as a
Yeah.
special call, because here's another thing that I have to consider. Look at our council meetings. Our council meetings have been the first and third Thursday of every month for 25 years. Our planning commission meetings are the second and fourth at 7, and people come when there's something on the agenda they want to talk about, which is very rare. And what we wind up with is about 2 or 3 people in the audience, and most of them are staff members. So that's something else to consider. So if you did a couple of test runs as special called meetings, see if anybody shows up.
yeah, and I would agree with that, Brandon. You're absolutely right. We don't get any kind of attendance at all unless there's a specific item on the agenda that affects them personally. But it still doesn't mean that we, at some point, like Philip had suggested with a special called meeting, that we can have one and then see and try to advertise it as much as we can to see if we do get some people here, just to make it sound like we're not having any secret meetings or anything of that nature. But
I
your
think
point
something
is
that we
good.
can publish in the meantime too, whenever we have events, we'll have DDA members there. We'll make sure that we publish for our events that if you want to talk to a DDA member, if you want to have a conversation about something that was on an agenda, something you see coming up on an agenda, at those events, board members and staff are going to be available to the public to talk and discuss about
I
whatever.
like that.
So we can have that in the meantime for sure. We'll make sure that people know that that's what you're here for. And when you're at events, that's a good.
All righty. Anybody else have any other thoughts? No need for executive session? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Short and sweet.
That's good, because it is Monday. It's Monday.
Chase some calls around.
Boys are good?